Welcome to the Daily History Podcast. Today, we embark on a journey back to the early 20th century, where we uncover the tumult of the 1905 Russian Revolution and its enduring impact as a precursor to Bolshevism. Delve with us into the fabric of a society on the brink as we explore the events and ideas that shaped a nation torn by strife, yet poised on the cusp of monumental change. As the 19th century gave way to the 20th, the Russian Empire was a study in contrasts. Rich in land and resources, it was nonetheless rife with social strife and political ferment. The autocratic rule of Tsar Nicholas II faced an unparalleled challenge as the country heaved under the pressures of rapid industrialization and the consequential societal shifts. Now, let's paint a vivid picture of pre-revolutionary Russia. The vast majority were peasants, toiling on land they could never own, living in communal villages that operated on tradition and the whim of the weather. Resentment brewed among these rural poor, exacerbated by harsh conditions and the burden of heavy taxes and redemption payments for lands granted to them after the Emancipation Reform of 1861. Meanwhile, in cities like St. Petersburg and Moscow, the new industrial workforce faced its own trials. The spark of the Industrial Revolution in Russia brought about factories and urbanization, but it also resulted in squalor and exploitation. Workers labored long hours for meager pay in unsafe conditions, often with little recourse against their employers. This gave way to increasing labor unrest, strikes, and politically charged gatherings, which the Tsarist regime sought to quell with a heavy hand. Alongside peasants and factory workers, Russia's intellectual circles were bustling with activity. Ideas about socialism, democracy, and workers' rights circulated widely in underground literature and secret meetings. Thinkers and activists debated a future Russia free from the shackles of autocracy. Educated society experienced a surge of liberalism and radicalism, frustrated by the lack of political freedom and the sluggish pace of reform. With the social fabric of the nation becoming more strained, the broader empire felt the tremors of change. These conditions set the stage for a revolutionary atmosphere, a landscape filled with those ready to advocate for change at all costs. It was only a matter of time before these disparate forces would collide in an event that would mark an indelible turning point in Russian history. The year 1905 would soon reveal itself to be a year like no other, a prelude to greater upheavals that would shake the very foundations of the Russian Empire and pave the way for radical transformations. The simmering unrest among the peasants, workers, and intellectuals suggested that the status quo could not hold. Russia was poised on the cusp of dramatic change. The stage was set for revolution. As the 20th century dawned upon the vast expanse of the Russian Empire, the air was thick with tension, anticipation, and a yearning for change. It was in this charged atmosphere that the events of January 22, 1905 unfolded, a date forever etched in history as Bloody Sunday, not for its joyous festivity, but for the stain of tragedy it left behind. On that fateful morning, thousands of peaceful protesters, led by the Orthodox priest Father Gapon, gathered before the Winter Palace in St. Petersburg. Clutching icons, religious symbols, and singing hymns, they carried a petitioner's appeal to Tsar Nicholas II, beseeching him for better working conditions, fairer wages, and basic civil liberties. What commenced as a tranquil demonstration soon turned into chaos. The Imperial Guard, upon orders that remained mired in controversy, opened fire on the unarmed crowd. The snow of Palace Square was painted crimson with the blood of men, women, even children, all fallen victims to the impervious bullets of their own nation's army. The echoes of those gunshots rippled across the empire, reverberating into the hearts of its people and awakening a widespread cry against unbearable injustice. The bloodshed of that day galvanized a series of nationwide strikes, paralyzing railroads, factories, and businesses. Workers from diverse industries united, and so did many ethnic minorities, all clamoring for one thing: a profound transformation of their social and political landscape. This was not a revolt confined to isolated pockets of discontent. It was pervasive, The sheer scale of strikes and protests was unprecedented. From the Baltic Sea to the Pacific coast, an estimated 2 million people arose in protest. The collective outcry against the autocracy sowed the seeds of a movement that would shake the foundations of an ancient regime. Bloody Sunday and its fallout did not immediately topple the Romanov dynasty, but they indelibly marked the psyche of a nation and became the catalyst for a series of events that continued to challenge the iron grip of Tsarist rule. The year 1905 would not signify an immediate revolutionary triumph, but it was undeniably a spark that ignited the smoldering embers of rebellion. In retrospect, we see that this uprising was a harrowing glimpse into a future Russian revolution, one that would not be ignored or so easily subdued. And so, the spark of Bloody Sunday and the sweeping strikes that ensued were not the finale, but rather the overture to a monumental symphony of revolt, one that continued to play out over the subsequent years. The collective outcry of 1905 resonated through time, setting the stage for the greater upheavals that lay in the restless womb of the future. As we navigate through the turbulent waves of the 1905 Russian Revolution, we now turn our focus to the icons of the revolution, two figures whose names are synonymous with the rise of Russian radicalism, Lenin and Trotsky. These individuals would not only shape the course of the revolution itself, but also sow the seeds for the eventual rise of Bolshevism in Russia. Vladimir Lenin, born Vladimir Ilyich Ulyanov, was a revolutionary through and through. By 1905, he had been active for years as a Marxist thinker and leader. His work, What Is to Be Done, laid down the blueprints for professional revolutionaries within a tightly knit party structure. His leadership style and focus on the working class as the force of revolution would become key principles for the Bolshevik movement. It was during the Revolution of 1905 that Lenin returned to Russia from exile, eager to guide the proletariat's uprising. Leon Trotsky, another towering figure, emerged as a principal leader during the revolution. Though not yet a Bolshevik, his ideas on permanent revolution, which articulated a vision for an ongoing struggle beyond national boundaries, resonated deeply with many revolutionaries. His involvement during the events of 1905 was pivotal. He organized the St. Petersburg Soviet, a workers' council, which would later serve as a model for the Soviets of the 1917 revolutions. His electrifying oratory skills and his pen were both formidable weapons against the Tsarist regime. The collaboration between these two men during the 1905 Russian Revolution wasn't immediate. Lenin and Trotsky had differing views on how the revolution should unfold. However, their combined legacies contributed significantly to the ideological framework of Bolshevism. They both promoted the idea of a vanguard party to lead the working class to victory, a principle that would define the Bolshevik strategy in the years leading up to the October Revolution of 1917. The ideological seeds planted by Lenin and Trotsky in 1905 sprouted amidst the chaotic social fabric of Russia. Lenin's focus on the disciplined organization and Trotsky's concept of permanent revolution became cornerstones of the Bolshevik ideology. The experience they gained during the 1905 revolution was invaluable, teaching them lessons in strategy, propaganda, and the mobilization of the masses. Lessons that would prove crucial in the years to come. Through their actions and their ideas, Lenin and Trotsky shaped the revolutionary spirit that would not only survive the apparent failure of 1905, but would also inspire a movement that shook the world. Their indelible marks on history serve as testaments to their roles as icons of the revolution, prime movers in an event that foreshadowed the seismic shifts that were yet to sweep through Russia and indeed the rest of the world. Let's delve into the outcomes of the 1905 Russian Revolution. Perhaps the most significant was the issuance of the October Manifesto by Tsar Nicholas II. On the 30th of October 1905, this document promised the Russian people the civil liberties they had long sought, including personal immunity, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, and freedom of association. While it was a direct response to the revolution's pressure, it fell short of creating a constitutional monarchy, but did pave the way for the creation of the State Duma, Russia's first elected parliament. Now, take a moment to picture the State Duma, which convened for the first time in April 1906. This legislative body was born out of the need to quell unrest and grant a voice to the populace. Yet the Tsar retained the power to veto its decisions and even dissolve it, which he did numerous times. This limited power gave rise to frustration, and dissatisfaction continued to simmer. Much like a bandage applied to a much deeper wound, it addressed the surface issues without healing the undercurrents of national discontent. Amidst this new political landscape, we witness the emergence of various revolutionary factions, each vying for influence. The Bolsheviks, a group led by the formidable Vladimir Lenin, seized upon the new political openness to propagate their message. They rose as the more radical branch of the Russian Social Democratic Labor Party, pushing for immediate and profound change. Their ideology promised a revolution led by the workers, and they quickly gained momentum as influencers of the public's revolutionary sentiments. As we reflect on this period, it's clear that the 1905 Revolution and the October Manifesto were pivotal moments. They introduced the seeds of parliamentary governance in Russia, but also highlighted the Tsar's reluctance to fully embrace democratic reforms. In doing so, the landscape was set for further revolutionary activity, with the Bolsheviks capitalizing on the desire for more substantive change. Indeed, the tides of change from the 1905 revolution set the stage for the waves of rebellion that would eventually culminate in the Russian Revolution of 1917. As we contemplate the events of 1905, we find ourselves reflecting on a legacy that is both tumultuous and transformative. It's in the revolution's wake that the seeds of Bolshevism began to take root, quietly and persistently, waiting for the right moment to blossom. The 1905 revolution, while not immediately overthrowing the Tsarist autocracy, set a precedent that would echo throughout Russian history and beyond. The waves of discontent that had surged through Russia resulted in the Tsar's reluctant issuance of the October Manifesto, which promised an expansion of civil liberties and the creation of a State Duma. Though these reforms were seen by many as too little too late, they provided a platform for political engagement that had not existed before. Revolutionary activities were forced to evolve from immediate uprising to a more calculated political strategy. It was through this transformation that revolutionary leaders like Lenin refined their tactics, ideas that would later shape the world in the form of Bolshevism. What cannot be understated is the impact of the 1905 revolution on the psyche of the Russian people and the ruling class. The memory of workers, peasants, and even sectors of the military standing in solidarity against the Tsarist regime would serve as a source of inspiration for future revolutions. It was an undeniable reminder that the will of the governed, once united, could challenge the will of the governor. This spirit of rebellion and demand for change contributed to a new political consciousness, eventually culminating in the revolutions of 1917. The 1905 revolution was not contained within the borders of Russia. Its shockwaves were felt across the globe, especially in countries burdened by autocratic governments. It was a harbinger that a new era was on the horizon, an era where the common people would no more be silent bystanders in the history written by their rulers. The ideologies and strategies birthed from this period would cross oceans and borders, influencing revolutions and ideological battles far and wide. In sum, the legacy of the Revolution of 1905 is that of a prelude, an opening chapter to decades of ideological struggle and change, not only in Russia, but around the world. It was a reflection of what could happen when the demand for dignity and rights overflowed the constraints of an oppressive regime. As the dominoes of the old world began to fall, new visions of governance and society were free to take their place. It is this legacy we carry with us as we continue to explore the vast, intricate tapestry of history. As we draw this episode to a close, let's take a moment to summarize the turbulent tapestry of events we've discussed today. The 1905 Russian Revolution, a crucible of modern political thought, spilled into the streets with demands for change that echoed across the entire Russian Empire. A collective cry for justice and dignity rose, leading to cascading effects that laid the groundwork for future revolutions. The groundswell of discontent, beginning with Bloody Sunday and bolstered by striking workers and rebelling peasants, sparked not just reforms, but a reimagining of power structures. This atmosphere of change brought forward the October Manifesto, leading to the creation of the Duma, an entity that offered a platform for political discourse and dissent. It paved the way for parties like the Bolsheviks, who would grasp the revolutionary momentum to drive their vision forward. In weaving together the fabric of today's historical narrative, we've seen how the strands of the 1905 revolution, the public's frustration, the brutal response of the state, the emergent leaders, and the push for a parliamentary system all played critical roles in shaping what would later define Bolshevism. These events established the ideological groundwork upon which Lenin and Trotsky would build, and they can be seen as the first chapters in a larger story that would dramatically unfold in the following years. While the revolution of 1905 was itself subdued, its spirit was not quenched, but rather smoldered, ready to ignite a greater blaze that would sweep across Russia and the world. Thank you for joining us on this historical odyssey through the 1905 Russian Revolution. If this episode stirred your curiosity or sparked a comment, remember to subscribe and leave your thoughts below. Your engagement is our greatest reward. Don't forget to suggest topics for our upcoming episodes. The one with the most likes will catch our eye for future content. Until next time, keep fostering your love for history. There's always more to explore with the Daily History Podcast.